Hello, my friend, and welcome back or welcome to Something for Everybody. My name is Aaron Mashbitz, and today is a solo episode of the podcast where I'm discussing 8 essential factors of resilience. Hello, my friend. Before we jump straight into the episode, I would love to share the sponsors of this podcast. And the sponsors of this podcast are all the businesses that I've created that are really part of the ecosystem that run this whole thing. And at the top of that list is Patreon. Patreon is the home of our exclusive community where we do bonus episodes, live streams, Q&As, and merch discounts, and so much more. Patreon is the number one way to support this podcast and to support my mental health nonprofit called You Are Loved. Next, we have my clothing brand called Shop for Everybody. Every hat and every t-shirt you see me wear on every single episode of this podcast is from Shop for Everybody. It's the home of For the Dads, For the Moms, all Something for Everybody merch, and it's the home of all You Are Loved merch. So that's shopforeverybody.com. And the last thing is my sports performance brand called Champions Adjust. Again, if you see anything Champions Adjust related, it's all found at champsadjust.com. It also has its own podcast. We also do a sports show through Champions Adjust. And if you're looking for any mindset or mental skills classes, they can all be found at champsadjust.com. And so if you want to stay up to date on everything that we're doing here with all of the businesses that I'm involved in, please go to aaronmashbitz.com and sign up for our weekly newsletter. Thank you. Now, on to the episode, completely uninterrupted and ad-free. Here we go. I recently heard someone describe the inherent unpredictability and uncertainty of life as feeling like looking both ways before crossing the street and then getting hit by an airplane. So maybe you feel that way. Maybe we all feel a little bit that way. And resilience is going to be the stuff that helps us move forward, because for better or worse, we often live under the illusion that things are stable when in fact they're always changing. That's a guarantee. We crave a straight line of increasing progress or happiness and growth. Yet in reality, we're always riding the waves between stability and chaos, or order and chaos, as Dr. Jordan Peterson talks about. So resilience, that really important, learnable and trainable mental skill, resilience is the capacity to bounce back and bounce forward when you get knocked down and to persevere during challenging times. Yes, resilience is about bouncing back, right? But then you get anti-fragile, then you get stronger, and then you bounce forward. It is a timeless quality, a learnable, trainable skill, but one feels I feel, at least though, it's very particularly timely and important for today's world. It's always been important, but maybe more important now. So we're going to discuss 8 principles that can help, all of which are supported by modern science, ancient wisdom, and daily practice. So we're going to talk about 8 principles. So let's jump into those 8 principles right now. Number 1, accept reality, no matter how hard. Every time you fight against reality, you fail. Periods of disorder are unavoidable, part of the human experience. Even the most average human existence has unavoidable disorder and parts that are hard, right? And so resisting them may feel good in the short term, but it's invariable leads to sort of long-term distress. So magical thinking and delusion eventually catch up to all of us. So acceptance does not mean it's like passive resignation. It means seeing reality for what it is. If you don't confront what is actually happening, you cannot work with it in a meaningful way. And so you need to take a 3-step process of awareness, acceptance, action. First, we become aware, then we accept, and then we move into action. So you can't fight against reality because you will always lose. But the first part of understanding this disorder, which is an avoidable part of our life, like I said, is be aware of it. Okay, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, I'm feeling a little out of alignment. This disorder is coming in, this keeps coming up. Okay, I'm aware of that. I'm accepting the fact that this is my reality. Now I'm going to move into some sort of action where I can combat this feeling or this period that I'm in, or whatever the case may be. And so I think taking that 3-step approach is really important. And so that's principle number 1. And then principle number 2 is focus solely on what you can control. There are 3 things that we can control as human beings. maybe there's a bit more, but like if we just simplify it down, really simplify it down to make it as easy as possible to focus on these things, it's these three things. It's our attitude, our effort, and our response. And that's exactly what we're talking about in this episode, all of the things that we can control. And that's why an important principle is trying to focus solely on what you can control and letting everything else go. Trying to control the trying to control the uncontrollable is a profound waste of time and energy, and it's an absolutely surefire path to anxiety and overwhelm and feeling like you can't do anything, right? It makes you feel stuck. There is a fundamental difference between worrying about a situation and actively doing something about it, right? Exerting that agency. That's what we have. That's our superpower as human beings, is that we can exert agency, even if it's only in small doses or little moments or here and there. It is key to restoring both health and hope, is focusing on the things you can control through exerting your agency, your daily choices, and your daily actions. So there is, again, a difference between worrying about a situation and actively doing something about it, right? Exerting not exerting that agency. Wow, this is like 430 podcast episodes, and I still can't speak. So bear with me. Here we go. We're going to keep rolling. Of course we are. This is the organic and authenticity of this podcast. And so we have to exert that agency. Again, three things we can control as humans: our attitude, our effort, and our response. I'll blame it on having a newborn and me being a little tired. No, I'm taking full responsibility. I'm going to get better. Here we go. Number 3 is respond, do not react. When, quote unquote, shit hits the fan, pause. Gather yourself before acting. Remember, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Thank you for that insight, Viktor Frankl, right? We know that we have that power. We have the power to respond. We talk about things we can control: effort, attitude, response. Response is one of the most important things we have control over, but we can only do that if we pause enough and think and take a deep breath and actually make the right course of action and not just react. So we have to respond, not just react. Respond, do not react. And you can use the 4P framework from Brad Stolberg to understand this process, right? He says pause, process, plan, and then proceed. I wrote a whole newsletter about this. So if you're interested in more in-depth about the 4P framework, comment down below and I will send you that newsletter. You can use the 4P framework to pause, process, plan, and then only then should you then proceed. That's how you respond, not react. And that's very important, especially when, again, quote unquote, shit hits the fan. Number 4, the fourth principle is embrace optimism. I think personally, optimism is the foundation for mental toughness. And so we have to acknowledge that life will contain hardship and hurt, yet we commit to moving forward with a hopeful attitude and energy anyways. That's optimism. Optimism is the foundational belief that things will work out for the best through the appropriate effort, energy, attention, and focus. That's the most important part, because you cannot be happy by constantly forcing happiness. Do what you can to hold space for the full range of the human experience and emotion: happiness and sadness, hope and fear, loss and possibility in the same day, even in the same hour. That's embracing optimism, embracing the fullness of life, because optimism is the foundation for mental toughness. Because when things get hard, we've trained this fundamental belief that things can and will work out for the best if I put in the appropriate effort, attention, energy, and focus. And so this is really about hunting the good stuff. Throughout your day, seek the amazing moments, hunt the good stuff, see the small moments that bring you joy. That's building this optimism into your life. And so when things get hard, you can still see that light at the end of the tunnel, right? Understanding that we can have happiness and sadness, hope and fear, because we've embraced this idea of optimism, which again, I think is the foundation for mental toughness. And I've never witnessed or seen or worked with a great elite athlete that wasn't optimistic. So think about that for your own life. And so on top of that, research does show that emotional flexibility is deeply associated with resilience. Here's an example. A study of U.S. college students after 9/11 found that those who could hold hope and loss simultaneously demonstrated greater resilience and fewer depressive symptoms. So this isn't about denial, right? It's about the capacity to hold positive emotions alongside negative ones. So understand that this emotional flexibility is associated with resilience, which is associated with optimism, which is associated obviously with the principles we've mentioned before. Now let's move on to number 5, which is lean on ritual and routine. When the ground like underneath you feels like it's shaking and moving and you can't just get your bearings and you can't stand, you don't know what to do. Like this is where having tried and true routines provides a source of stability, right? Whether it's your morning coffee, your daily walk, your meditation practice, your gym workout, or your evening reading. Like the substance of the routine is less important than the impact, than the simple fact that you have the routine to lean on. What matters is having something consistent you can come back to again and again and again. That's why elite athletes talk about their routines and their process as the most important thing, because that's what they have control over. That's what breeds consistency, and that's what helps them stay stable, even though there's so many ups and downs when it comes to the sports world, especially in my sport of expertise, which is baseball. You can go 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts one night, and you can go 3 for 4 the next night. But what helps with that consistency and staying stable and on the right path is that routine, is that process to get you back into your baseline over and over and over again. And we as human beings in the world can adopt those same types of processes. So that's number 5, is lean on ritual and routine. And then you move to number 6, which is prioritize the fundamentals. We have to be brilliant at the basics. This is probably my number 1 thing that I go to over and over and over and over again. If you've listened to all 430 episodes of this podcast, you know that the fundamentals are the most important thing for me, right? If we're going to build the tallest building in the world, what's the first thing that we do? We build so deep into the ground so we have the strongest foundation possible. That's what the fundamentals are. So it's moving your body regularly. It's prioritizing sleep. It's doing what you can to eat nutritious foods and not letting the basics fall behind, or at least, not for too long. Sometimes life does just get really, really, really hectic. But all of these fundamentals support the underlying physiological and psychological strength that you need to be the best version of yourself. These daily habits and daily commitments absolutely must serve as non-negotiable foundation for which you gain strength, show up, confront reality, and meet challenges. This is really about eating well, moving well, sleeping well, and thinking well. These are our fundamentals. We have to be brilliant at these basics no matter what. These are the non-negotiables. These are part of our routines and our rituals. These are the things we have full control over, and we have to dial in on them as much as humanly possible so we have the strongest foundation we can possibly have, so we're not blown away by any gust of wind, but we can stand tall and sturdy and strong through the adversity. And as we're talking about with resilience, bounce forward through that. And that's really, really important. And then we move on to number 7. We have 7 and 8 left, and then that'll wrap up this episode. So number 7, this principle number 7 is ask for help and seek connection. Ask for help and seek connection, right? We know during periods of disorder, there can be a strong urge to shut down and isolate, right? We all had that feeling like things aren't going well. Okay, so I'm going to shut down and isolate. Well, we have to rewire our brain and resist the urge to do that. So we have to do what we can to resist that urge, right? Vulnerability, we know, builds trust and connection. So study after study after study shows that seeking social support is the number 1 factor of resilience. And so again, I mentioned this almost as much as I mentioned the being brilliant at the basics, but Harvard did an 85-year study, a robust study on happiness and living the good life. And they found that great health fundamentals and great relationships are the key to the good life. So if we're eating well, moving well, sleeping well, and then thinking well as part of our great relationships, that is going to create the good life, the most happiness that we can possibly have. And relationships are a beautiful thing, but they take work, they take effort, they take vulnerability, and they take sort of like rewiring some of our tendencies of our brain, right? The urge to shut down and isolate when things get hard, instead of resisting that urge and trying to share and ask for help and seek connection and be a part of a community and all of those things. And again, study after study after study show that social support and being of service to other people is the number one factor in resilience and also living the good life. And so then we move on to number 8, which is release the need to force meaning, right? It can be incredibly helpful to release sort of this pressure of needing to feel like this has to be meaningful. Everything happens for a reason. I need to make the most out of this, in favor of sometimes simply just getting through, right? Sometimes things just suck and that's okay, right? Meaning and growth, if they're going to come, often arrive on their own timeline and when we least expect it, right? I think about 95% of life we can learn and grow from, but we don't have to force that meaning and growth. It comes naturally when we start to understand, oh, I have experience here. I've got more competence in this idea. I feel better than I did last time this happened. Oh, I can grow from this. Oh, I'm getting better at this. That's about 95% of life. Yes, we want to fall, get back up, and be better than we were before when we fell, right? But about 5% of life just sucks. And sometimes the only thing we need to do is just get through it. And that is totally okay. There's no need to force meaning through this horrible thing. But all the other parts of life, heartbreak, failure, setback, obstacles, all those things can make us stronger, can make us better, and evolve us into the best version of ourselves in greatest service to the world. And so we know that research shows that when we look back on our challenging periods in a much more productive and meaningful light than when we experience them, right? So being able to reflect on them. That's why athletes, every great athlete has a reflection process of like, well, better, how. And so the same thing when our lives, right? Same thing with our life, where the research shows that when we look back on challenging periods, we have a more productive and more meaningful light when we're actually experiencing them. When we're actually experiencing them, we're forcing ourselves to have meaning through it. There's not much clarity there. But when we get through it and then we look back on it, then we can say, oh, the meaning was there. The productiveness was there. The experience there taught me this. This was powerful here. Using a journaling or a meditation process to understand how those experiences actually made you the person that you are today, right? But in some harrowing instances, all that matters is showing up. Really, all that matters is showing up, because you can't win the game. The game is life if you don't actually show up on a consistent basis, if you aren't in the arena getting blood, sweat, and tears. I think that's a really, really important part. And so sometimes that is enough. And the real growth is learning to just to let it be. So there's two sides to that coin, but most of the time we really do want to find meaning and growth through those experiences. But the point is, with that principle, is the releasing the need to actually force that meaning. And so those are the 8 essential factors of resilience. And so let's go through them one at a time, one more time, so you understand. We have number 1, accept reality no matter how hard. We have number 2, focus solely on what you can control. We have 3, respond, do not react. Okay. We have 4, embrace optimism. We have 5, lean on ritual and routine. We have 6, prioritize the fundamentals. And we have 7, ask for help and seek connection. And then we have number 8, release the need to force meaning. Again, those are the 8 essential factors of resilience. And so maybe to wrap it up, to put a bow on the top, it's all just, again, about showing up. Like, that is the number one thing. Nothing great can happen if you don't show up. So even, and perhaps especially when it feels hard and overwhelming, let's keep showing up. Let's stay patient. Life is a 9-inning game, right? Continue, if for no other reason than to stand still is not an option, right? But progress happens little by little, gradually, then suddenly. That's the power of compound interest. And that's the power of you continually showing up over and over and over again, even and especially when it's hard. You can do it. Apply these principles of resilience, one principle at a time, building incrementally from there. You can do it. You got this. I 100% believe in you. And thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time and attention. And I'll see you guys next time. Lots of love. Cheers. Thank you very much for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click right here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But most importantly, above all else, please please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.